Welcome to Quiet History at Bedtime. This channel is still very new, so if you enjoy calm historical storytelling, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications. Your support truly helps this little channel grow. Tonight we are not following Cleopatra as a legend carved in marble, or as a queen reduced to gossip and spectacle. We are following her as a living woman, moving through a single day in Alexandria, where every small gesture carries the weight of a kingdom. And now, let the noise of the modern world drift away. Imagine the first pale light gathering over the Mediterranean, the harbor still blue with dawn, the palace quiet except for distant footsteps, the rustle of linen, and the low murmur of servants already awake. Our story begins in the dim hour before sunrise, when Cleopatra opens her eyes in a city that depends, in ways both visible and hidden, on her next decision. She does not wake in silence. Alexandria is never truly silent. Even before the sun climbs, there are sounds moving through the palace grounds and out beyond the walls. Gulls over the harbor, ropes creaking on ships, sandals against stone corridors, the whisper of attendants carrying oil lamps through rooms that still hold the coolness of night. Somewhere farther off, men are already unloading grain. Somewhere closer, a bronze basin is being set carefully on a low table. Cleopatra lies still for a moment and listens. Queens do not enjoy the luxury of slow waking. Her body wakes before her thoughts fully gather, already measuring the day ahead. Reports from the harbor, messages from officials inland, rumors from Rome, accounts from tax collectors, questions of wheat, loyalty, money, military readiness, and the endless necessity of appearing calm. The room around her is elegant but not magical. Cushions, carved wood, woven cloth, polished metal, painted walls. Scented oil still lingers faintly in the air from the night before. A servant waits just outside, listening for movement. Another has already prepared water. Another has selected garments that speak without words. Authority, refinement, continuity, control. When Cleopatra finally rises, she steps onto a floor cooled by stone. The first act of the day is not grandeur, it is attention. Her attendants help wash sleep from her face with water poured from a ceramic vessel. Linen is offered. Hair is loosened, combed, and prepared. A queen's appearance is not vanity alone. In a court where every eye reads meaning into fabric, jewelry, and posture, appearance is part of government. Before anyone speaks to her of politics, the day must be shaped around her body. Oils may be rubbed lightly into the skin. A simple first garment is placed around her, while more formal clothing waits nearby. Cosmetics are not an afterthought. In her world, to be seen as diminished is to invite speculation. To be seen as precise, composed, and luminous is to remind everyone that the throne is occupied by someone fully awake. Outside, dawn is beginning to reveal Alexandria. This is not a village waking to roosters and dust alone. This is one of the great cities of the Mediterranean, crowded with languages, merchants, scholars, sailors, priests, accountants, soldiers, petitioners, dock workers, and spies. Cleopatra rules Egypt, but she rules from a place that faces outward as much as inward. The sea matters, trade matters, Rome matters. Everything is connected. Before the formal clothing is brought, she may take a few moments with quiet ritual. Not always prayer in the grand sense, but pause, reflection. sometimes a small offering, sometimes a private word to the gods. A ruler who is treated as nearly divine in public may still need a private moment to gather herself as a human being. Servants move carefully around her, never rushing, yet never idle. One arranges writing materials that may be needed later. Another checks seals on small boxes. Another confers with a senior attendant about who is waiting, what messages arrived in the night, and which visitors must be delayed. Cleopatra will soon be visible to the machinery of rule, and once that begins, her day will no longer belong to her alone. The garments selected for the morning are deliberate. Linen, light enough for the Egyptian heat, but of fine quality. Jewelry chosen not just for beauty, but for symbolic effect. Gold catches light. Gemstones hold meaning. A crown or diadem does not merely decorate, it declares. In the Ptolemaic court, Greek and Egyptian symbols mingle uneasily and strategically. Cleopatra understands this better than almost anyone. She is a Macedonian Greek queen ruling an Egyptian land, and survival requires mastery of image. That is one reason she is remembered so vividly. Not because she simply liked display, but because display was a language, and she spoke it fluently. When she enters a room, the room must know what it is seeing. Not a frightened young woman surrounded by older men. Not a provincial monarch waiting to be absorbed by Rome. It must see a sovereign. Soon the first tray of the morning is brought. The meal is modest compared with the extravagant banquets later generations imagine. Bread, fruit, perhaps figs, dates, cheese, watered wine or beer, depending on the setting and custom of the household, and sometimes eggs or fish. Even in a palace, not every meal is spectacle. Morning is for steadiness. She must think clearly. While she eats, someone begins reading summaries aloud. Grain tallies, river levels, temple concerns, merchant disputes. Letters whose wording matters as much as their substance. Cleopatra is famous for charisma, but charisma alone cannot hold a kingdom. Administration is the invisible skeleton of power. Somewhere in Egypt, a village official has written a complaint. Somewhere else, a shipment is delayed. Somewhere else, a man who swore loyalty is now silent. She asks questions, she interrupts, she notices omissions. This is one of the reasons her enemies underestimated her at their own risk. They imagined seduction where there was calculation, glamour where there was discipline. But a ruler who survives as long as Cleopatra did, amid family violence and Roman ambition, cannot afford vagueness. From an open window or terrace, if she steps close enough, the city spreads beneath the morning light. The harbor begins to glitter, masts sway. The great pulse of Alexandria grows louder. Somewhere beyond the visible buildings stands the famous library world, the academies, the temples, the crowded districts where ordinary people begin their own hard days. Bakers heat ovens, children are sent on errands, porters bend beneath loads, fishmongers argue over freshness, priests cleanse altars. The Queen's morning unfolds at a distance from these lives, yet it depends on them entirely. That dependence is one of the hidden truths of monarchy. The palace appears elevated, but it rests on countless unseen hands. Grain farmers along the Nile, scribes with tired fingers, craftsmen repairing doors and carts, women grinding flour in kitchens, laborers hauling stone under the sun. Cleopatra may dine from polished vessels, but the kingdom itself is built out of repetitive human effort. And she knows, at least better than many rulers do, that famine or unrest below can shake the highest rooms above. By early morning, the private hours are gone. The machinery of court begins in earnest. Advisors enter. Secretaries unroll documents. Officials present disputes that must be settled before they spread. Ambassadors, or people who hope to be treated like ambassadors, wait to be admitted. The queen sits, listens, questions, weighs. This part of her day would look less dramatic than a painting, yet it is the true center of rule. Not the barge on the river, not the jewels, not the stories told later by men who wanted to turn her into a warning or fantasy. The center is paperwork, speech, memory, and judgment. A wrong appointment can cost a province. A delayed shipment can feed anger. A misunderstood Roman mood can become catastrophe. Cleopatra likely moved between languages with unusual ease. Ancient writers remarked on her learning and on her ability to speak to different peoples directly. In a court so deeply shaped by Hellenistic culture, that mattered enormously. Language is intimacy, but it is also leverage. To address someone without an interpreter is to remove a layer of distance. It is also to signal intelligence. Imagine her hearing reports from tax administrators. Egypt is rich because the Nile makes it rich. But wealth does not flow effortlessly. It must be measured, stored, protected, and extracted. Grain is not merely food. Grain is political stability. Grain is payment. Grain is influence. Grain can travel to Rome, and Rome's appetite is vast. The state watches harvests closely because shortage means unrest, and abundance attracts ambition. She may also hear from temple representatives. Religion in Egypt is not a decorative backdrop. It is woven into legitimacy itself. A ruler must be seen in relationship with the gods. Temples are spiritual institutions, but they are also economic and social powers. To alienate them carelessly is foolish. To control them clumsily is dangerous. Cleopatra has to balance royal authority with sacred expectation. There are also family ghosts in the room, even when no relatives stand before her. The Ptolemaic dynasty is notorious for rivalry, marriages within the family, coups, sudden deaths, exile, and restoration. Cleopatra did not ascend into a peaceful inheritance. She emerged from a household where blood ties did not guarantee safety. Every decision she makes is shadowed by that history. Every trusted face may carry a second face beneath it. When petitioners are admitted, the contrast can be striking. A merchant asking relief. A local notable arguing over privilege. A commander requesting funds or clarity. A scholar seeking patronage. Some come with gifts, some with flattery, some with carefully hidden threats. Cleopatra must hear enough to understand, but not so much that the day dissolves into endless pleading. One of the skills of rulership is deciding who gets time. Time itself becomes a royal currency. To grant audience is to confer value. To delay audience is to warn. To refuse audience is to declare something. Even silence can act like policy. As the sun climbs, the rooms warm. Linen keeps the body cooler, but Egypt does not spare anyone heat entirely. Servants bring water. The air may be moved with fans. Incense burns lightly in some chambers. Voices rise and fall. Wax seals break. New letters appear. Somewhere in the palace kitchen, preparations for midday are already underway. Because while the queen governs, the large living body of the court must also be fed, organized, and kept moving. At some point in the day, she turns from immediate administration to strategy, and this is where her mornings likely take on a sharper edge. Egypt in Cleopatra's time is not merely another kingdom among many. It is wealthy, symbolically ancient, and dangerously exposed to Roman power. The Roman Republic is not yet an emperor's machine, but it is already immense, hungry, and unstable. Its internal struggles spill outward, and rulers beyond Rome are forced to read those struggles as if their own lives depend on them, because they do. This is the realm in which Cleopatra became extraordinary. Not because danger disappeared around her, but because she understood that survival required reading personalities as carefully as accounts. Rome is not one voice. It is factions, resentments, alliances, debts, egos, and military reputations wrapped in republican language. A messenger from Rome does not simply bring information. He brings the emotional weather of another world. Perhaps she receives updates on shipping. Perhaps a trusted advisor describes a senator's shifting loyalties. Perhaps there are rumors about Caesar's enemies, or the growing influence of men whose names will someday fill history books. Cleopatra must decide how visible to be, how generous, how cautious, how bold. If she leans too little into Rome, she risks isolation. If she leans too far, she risks becoming dependent. These are not abstract matters. They shape how guards are posted, where money goes, which allies are cultivated, which family members are watched, which officials are promoted, and how public ceremonies are staged. Politics in the ancient world can seem grand from a distance, but up close it is often made of exhausting repetition and controlled fear. By midday, perhaps the court pauses. Not fully. Power never really pauses. But there may be a shift in rhythm, a lighter meal, a move into a more shaded area, a moment when the body, despite the crown, asserts itself. Hunger returns. The neck aches from ornament. The heat presses more heavily. Eyes tire from reading and scrutiny. Even queens become physically weary. This is where an ordinary human feeling can slip into the day. She might hear music faintly from another wing. She might think of her children. She might remember her father with all the complications that memory would carry. She might feel irritation at some incompetent official, and then immediately have to smooth her face into regal control before the next person is admitted. It is one of the lonelier aspects of rulership that so much feeling must be managed before it is shown. Other people may shout, complain, or weep openly. A queen cannot do so without consequence. Her face must often become a surface others can project confidence onto. Still, Cleopatra was not famous only for discipline. She was famous for presence. Ancient sources, even hostile ones, often suggest that her power lay not simply in physical beauty, but in voice, wit, intelligence, and force of personality. That means part of her day is performance in the nobler sense. The deliberate art of making others feel that they stand in the presence of someone larger than circumstance. Performance, however, is tiring. To be vivid on command is work. To charm while calculating is work. To persuade while remaining guarded is work. By the middle of the day, the Queen of Egypt may already have spent more emotional energy than many of her subjects can imagine, even as those subjects are themselves laboring in fields, workshops, kitchens, temples, and docks under a very different kind of burden. In the hotter hours, the palace turns inward. Shadows become precious. Curtains stir in the faintest breeze. Stone floors hold what coolness they can. Servants move with bowls of water, cloth, and scent. The body demands relief, and this is where stories about Cleopatra often leap too quickly into fantasy. Bathing, cosmetics, and perfume did matter, but not simply as indulgence. In the royal world, care of the body was linked to health, symbolism, sensuality, rank, and ritual. Imagine a bathing chamber prepared for her. Water poured and adjusted, oils laid out, unguents with scents of myrrh, frankincense, or other resins valued across the eastern Mediterranean. Towels of fine linen. Perhaps attendants speaking quietly while jewelry is removed piece by piece. The queen can finally, for a moment, leave behind the weight of display and feel her body as body. Skin heated by the day, hair needing attention, muscles tight from formality. This is also a moment of repair. The face that will meet others again must be restored, refreshed, and made once more to seem effortless. That effortlessness is an illusion purchased by labor. Many royal images throughout history depend on unseen attendants whose names vanish completely. They warm the water, mix the oils, wash the cloth, fasten the clasps, braid the hair, paint the eyes. The queen is singular in status, but never alone in practice. While this is happening, conversation may continue. A trusted servant may bring gossip too minor for the council chamber, but not too minor to matter. A companion might mention how a visitor looked uneasy, or how two officials avoided each other in a corridor, or how the mood in the harbor markets seems different this week. Great decisions are not made from official information alone. They are shaped by atmosphere. Cleopatra's relationship to presentation is one of the most fascinating parts of her story. Later imagination often turned her into a pure seductress, as if her power existed mainly to enchant men. But image in her world is broader than seduction. It includes divinity, theatricality, reassurance, intimidation, fertility, learning, and control. To be seen correctly is a kind of victory. After bathing, she may rest briefly, though even rest is likely interrupted. Musicians might play softly. A text might be read aloud. A physician could be consulted about some recurring discomfort. Ancient medicine can soothe, but it can also fail in ways familiar to every century. Headaches, stomach complaints, skin irritations, fatigue, childbirth dangers, infections, grief carried in the body. Queens are not spared mortality because flatterers call them goddesses. If her children are nearby, perhaps this is one of the times she sees them. History remembers dynasties in terms of succession, but parenthood is lived in smaller gestures. A question, a smile, a correction, a glance that lingers longer than protocol requires. Cleopatra's children are not only beloved figures, if they are beloved. They are also political realities. Each child could represent continuity, alliance, vulnerability, future hope, or future danger. To hold one's child in a palace full of strategy must be a strange experience. Tenderness and calculation cannot fully be separated. The same little hand that reaches toward a mother may someday be used by others as a claim to power. And outside all this, ordinary Alexandria keeps moving. Men sweat under sacks of grain. Women bargain in markets. Potters shape clay. Sailors curse ropes and weather. Priests recite. Dogs wander alleys. Flies gather where food is sold. The queen's bath may smell of precious oil, but the city that sustains it smells of salt, fish, smoke, labor, and heat. Later in the afternoon, the rhythm of the palace rises again. Guests may be received in more formal style. Messages require response. Financial matters return. Military matters cannot be ignored for long. Egypt's wealth attracts not only traders but also opportunists. And the sea, so beautiful in morning light, is also a route by which danger approaches. Perhaps a commander gives an update. Perhaps a map is spread before her. Perhaps someone speaks of border issues, local unrest, supplies, ships, or men whose loyalty depends too heavily on payment. Cleopatra has to think not only as a ceremonial ruler, but as a strategist. Even when others handle the details of arms, she must understand enough to survive those who do. This is another way in which her day differs from that of the ordinary people she rules, yet also resembles theirs more than one might think. Many common people live with practical uncertainty, whether crops will fail, whether taxes will increase, whether sickness will come, whether sons will be taken into service, whether food will hold through a bad season. Cleopatra's uncertainty is larger in scale, but it is still uncertainty. Her throne is not a cushion protecting her from risk. It is a seat placed directly in the path of it. Toward evening, public or semi-public appearances may matter more. The queen must be seen receiving, seen composed, seen adorned, seen in continuity with the traditions that legitimate her. In an ancient monarchy, distance can create awe, but too much invisibility can breed rumor. People need stories about stability, and rulers help create those stories through ritual presence. This may be the hour of audiences held in more splendid rooms, where architecture itself becomes part of politics. Columns, polished surfaces, tapestries, light striking gold. Attendants placed at deliberate intervals. A visitor entering such a room is meant to feel not only the personality of Cleopatra, but the density of the state around her. The setting tells him that he is not dealing with a private woman alone, but with Egypt. And yet, beneath that magnificence, she is still a person measuring faces, tone, hesitation, confidence, and deceit. To sit on a throne is to spend many hours decoding other people. Who is lying? Who is frightened? Who is too eager? Who has come rehearsed? Who thinks a woman can be maneuvered more easily than a man? Cleopatra would have known that underestimation can be turned into an asset, but only if noticed in time. As daylight softens, another layer of preparation begins. Evening in a royal court can mean dinner, ceremony, entertainment, diplomacy, or all at once. Food is arranged not merely to satisfy hunger, but to communicate abundance. Wine appears, musicians are readied. Seating matters, sequence matters. Which guest is nearest the queen matters. Which topic is raised first matters. Meals in such settings are acts of controlled theater. Conversation must flow, but not drift. Humor may appear, but within limits. Information can be gathered more gently over food than under formal interrogation. Laughter can uncover as much as fear. Cleopatra, if ancient descriptions are to be trusted, understood the social art of making others open themselves, while she remained difficult to fully read. That skill becomes especially potent in the fading light. Evening softens edges. People speak more freely. Vanity rises. Boasts become longer. Complaints slip out. Ambition reveals itself in passing remarks. A queen who listens well can learn a great deal while appearing only to host. When the evening meal begins, later imagination often wants it to become immediately decadent, all jewels and excess. Sometimes it surely was splendid. Royal courts do not survive by simplicity alone. Yet even splendor has structure. Servants carry dishes in order. Wine is mixed and poured. Guests watch one another almost as much as they watch the queen. There may be fish, fowl, vegetables, bread, sauces, fruits, sweets, and imported luxuries whose presence says more than their taste alone ever could. Music might accompany the gathering, perhaps flutes, strings, rhythmic patterns that blend pleasure with atmosphere. Lamps are lit. Light shimmers against metal and glass. Perfume hangs faintly in the air. Outside, the sky deepens above Alexandria, and the harbor begins to glow in scattered points of fire. This is a good hour to remember that Cleopatra's fame was built not only on private encounter, but on political theater. To host magnificently is to display capacity. To display capacity is to reassure allies and unsettle rivals. Wealth arranged visibly becomes argument. Refinement becomes argument. Ease becomes argument. At table, however, no one is ever fully off duty. A flattering guest may be fishing for weakness. A joking guest may be testing limits. A Roman may be measuring how dependent Egypt appears. An Egyptian noble may be measuring how Greek the queen chooses to seem tonight. Identity in her court is layered, and every layer can matter. Imagine Cleopatra speaking with unusual brightness, then letting silence fall at exactly the right moment. Imagine her asking a question that sounds casual but is not. Imagine her hearing an answer and understanding three implications at once. This, too, is part of her daily life. Not battle in the cinematic sense, but continual strategic conversation. Perhaps there is entertainment after the meal. Dancers, musicians, recitations, intellectual exchange. Alexandria is a city of learning as well as trade, and one should not imagine its court as empty of thought. Cleopatra herself was associated with education, study, and cultivated speech. A ruler may strengthen her image not only by wealth, but by wit. And yet, even amid music and ceremony, tiredness returns. Jewels begin to feel heavy again. The smile required by the evening can become its own ache. Candlelight flatters the face, but it also reminds the body that the day is long. A queen may look most radiant precisely when she is most exhausted. This is where the emotional cost of public life gathers. Everyone sees the composed exterior. Few see the effort it takes not to let irritation, grief, anxiety, or sheer weariness interrupt that exterior. Cleopatra is remembered as dramatic, but much of real drama is restraint. Holding oneself together is one of history's most invisible labors. As the gathering thins, some guests depart with satisfaction, some with resentment, some with sharpened intention. Servants clear vessels, floors are swept again. Messages that could not be delivered publicly may now be whispered in corridors. One final report might arrive, because kingdoms do not care that it is late. Beyond the palace, night settles over Alexandria in layers. Taverns remain noisy in some quarters. Sailors gamble. Families crowd into dim rooms. Lovers meet. Thieves watch. Priests tend late rituals. Somewhere, a child coughs in sleep. Somewhere, a woman keeps grinding grain by lamplight because tomorrow's bread depends on tonight's labor. The queen's lamps burn over polished floors, but the city's darkness is never far away. Eventually, at last, Cleopatra withdraws from the formal spaces of rule. The attendants close doors. The noise softens. Jewelry is removed piece by piece, and each removal feels like stepping away from a public role back toward the vulnerable outline of a person. The diadem comes off, the heavy earrings, the bracelets. The adornments that made her appear larger than life are set down carefully by hands that know their value better than most citizens know the value of everything they own. Her hair is loosened again. Cosmetics are wiped away. A lighter garment is brought, warm water perhaps, or a final washing of hands and face. Lamps are lowered. The night air may move through screens or open spaces, carrying with it sea scent, distant smoke, and the softened sounds of a city that has not entirely gone to sleep. This is the hour when thought can become dangerous. During the day, decisions move too quickly to allow every fear its full voice. At night, fear has room. Cleopatra may think of Rome then in a different way, not as a sequence of messages and tactics, but as a shadow hanging over the future. Men there argue, scheme, and command armies that can alter her life from across the sea. Their rivalries are not truly theirs alone. They reach into her bedchamber, her children's future, the fate of Egypt itself. She may think, too, of mortality. Ancient courts lived close to splendor and close to death. Illness could move fast. Childbirth could kill. Assassination was never a myth in dynasties like hers. A cup, a blade, a betrayal, a failed alliance, a delayed army, a wrong reading of another ruler's pride. History often condenses the fate of kingdoms into a few famous scenes, but those scenes are built from years of private unease. Perhaps she reads or has something read aloud. Perhaps she speaks more honestly to one trusted companion than she could to any official all day. Perhaps she asks after a child already asleep. Perhaps she simply sits for a while and allows silence to become real around her. There is a temptation, when thinking of queens, to imagine that solitude in a palace must be luxurious. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is only lonely. There are rooms enough, attendants enough, goods enough, and still almost no one with whom one can be entirely unguarded. Rank creates magnificence, but it also creates distance. At last she goes to bed. The same city that woke her now continues beyond her walls. The harbor shifts under moonlight. Watchmen call. Oars tap water somewhere in the dark. Dogs bark. Wind touches banners and shutters. The queen lies down in linen and shadow, perhaps more tired than she is willing to admit, knowing that dawn will bring another day of embodiment, calculation, and display. This is what makes Cleopatra more interesting than the legend that flattened her. Not simply that she was glamorous, but that she had to wake up, think, choose, present, endure, and lie down again under pressures few people could survive. Even her beauty, whatever form it truly took, was not separate from labor. Even her charm was work. Even her power was precarious. So when we imagine a day in the life of Cleopatra, we should imagine both the gold and the strain, the ceremony and the fatigue, the perfume and the political danger. A human life does not stop being human because the walls are gilded. And still, for all her rank, Cleopatra's world rests on ordinary rhythms that never disappear. Water poured into a basin, bread broken by hand, messages carried from one room to another, a child needing reassurance, fabric against skin, the body seeking shade from heat. a mind trying to remain sharp while weariness thickens around it. These are small things, but history is made out of small things repeated under extraordinary conditions. Perhaps that is why her story continues to fascinate people across centuries. She stands at the meeting point of the intimate and the immense. We remember the names of Caesar and Antony, the monuments and the battles. But inside those famous events, there were also mornings like this one, and nights like this one. Someone woke before sunrise. Someone chose a garment. Someone listened to reports while half hungry. Someone doubted, hoped, calculated, and hid the doubt again. Cleopatra's day also reminds us of the strange burden placed on powerful women in history. Men who rule are often remembered for action. Women who rule are often remembered for atmosphere, appearance, scandal, or desire, as if politics could not belong fully to them. Cleopatra's enemies, especially Roman ones, found it useful to describe her through fascination. Fascination can be a form of dismissal. It turns strategy into seduction and intellect into charm. But a full day with Cleopatra makes such simplifications harder to maintain. To govern at her level demanded endurance, training, memory, symbolic intelligence, emotional control, and relentless adaptation. It demanded surviving not only enemies, but narratives, the stories others wanted told about her. If we could step quietly through the palace tonight and look one last time toward the room where she sleeps, we would not see a myth. We would see a woman who must rise again tomorrow and do it all once more. She will have to become the queen again before the city fully wakes. The oils, the garments, the reports, the calculations, the faces, the judgments, the ritual, the performance, the risk. A throne is not an ending. It is a repetition. And perhaps that is the truest bedtime thought in all of this. Across the centuries, beneath all difference, human beings are still creatures of repeated days. Some days are spent in mud-brick homes, some in palaces near the sea. Some are spent grinding grain, some ruling a kingdom. Yet nearly all are made of waking, enduring, deciding, eating, speaking, worrying, hoping, and finally lying down in the dark. The details change, the scale changes, the stakes change. But the daily rhythm remains strangely familiar. Cleopatra's world is dazzlingly far away, and yet in her tiredness, her need for composure, her management of other people, her brief private moments, and her awareness that tomorrow is already approaching, she becomes recognizably human again. So let the palace grow quiet now. Let the torches burn lower. Let the harbor lights soften in the distance. Let the voices in the corridors fade one by one. The queen sleeps. The city breathes. And history itself seems to loosen, just for a while, into the gentler rhythm of night. Thank you for spending this quiet journey with Quiet History at Bedtime. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. It really helps this new channel grow. And now, wherever you are, close your eyes. Let your thoughts drift and rest. Good night and sleep well.